Okay, we took a quick break there, and just so you all know that in the pathos section, of course, I want you to give me 3 examples of advertisements or billboards or commercials that you've seen that are based on emotion. You can't use, obviously, the SPCA or the Starving Children in Third World Countries. So you want to think of some other types of emotion-based commercials, all right? Now we're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to talk about this slide on your PowerPoint called Know Your Audience. It is important when you are persuading people to do things to know who it is you're talking to. What is their mindset on something? Because that will influence the way you go about persuading them. So for instance, when you look at your paper and you see on there it says CTA, and I have a couple of them on here. CTA means call to action. So what you've done is you've created a solution. Here's the problem, and here's how we're going to fix it. Here's the solution to fix the problem. Your calls to action are how you're going to go about fixing the problem. If I want you to wear flip-flops, then I need to come up with ways to make it easy for you to wear flip-flops. So I need to come up with different calls to action. Those calls to action will be based on your anticipation of the kind of audience members you might have. If you're doing a one-on-one kind of persuasion, that's easy. You find out that person and you target them, no problem. But you have a whole group of people that you will be trying to persuade to wear flip-flops or whatever your topic is. You don't really know where they stand. So you need to come up with a different call to action for the different types of audience members you have. I have 3 listed on the paper. You might use more. You shouldn't use less than 3, but you certainly might have more than 3. Let's talk about the different types of audience members that you might be trying to persuade. The first one is they might be in favor. Now, you can sit here and say, well, if I'm trying to persuade somebody who's in favor, there's not really anything for me to do. They already agree with me, don't they? Well, theoretically, yes. But I want you to go back to that very first slide that we talked about where we said that your objective in persuasion is to change somebody's mind or to change their behavior. So if I asked all of you to raise your hands, who in here believes that it's important to eat right and exercise regularly? Probably pretty much everybody would raise their hand because we all believe that it's important to do that. If I were to say how many of you actually eat nothing but healthy foods and you exercise at least 3 to 5 times every week without fail, probably only 1 or 2 hands might come up. There's a couple of you who follow that very strict health regimen. So I could not get up in front of you and try to convince you to believe that it's important to eat right and exercise regularly because you already agree with me. You know, I'd be preaching to the choir if I did that. What I need to do in that case is I need to reinforce that belief. Okay, we're all on the same page here. This is great. Now, what I have to do is figure out why you're not doing what you know you should be doing. So I have to focus on changing your behavior. All right? What's the problem? What's keeping you from eating healthy all the time and exercising regularly? Is it a money issue? Is it a time issue? Is it a motivation issue? You're just not motivated. You know, you're a full-time student and you're a full-time employee and you're a full-time parent and there's just not enough time in the day to do everything you need to do, right? All right, so if I am going to try to come up with a call to action that is going to target behavior, changing behavior, then one of the suggestions that I might give to you, one of the calls to action might be, pretty much everybody in here is in a vehicle. Pretty much everybody in here is on the road all the time. Maybe you have your own car and you drive, or you're a passenger, or maybe you take a bus, but whatever it is, you're on the road. So what I want you to do, this is going to be one of my call to actions, what I want you to do every time you are at a red light, when you're in your vehicle, whenever you're stopped at a red light, I want you to clench your butt cheeks. And I want you to clench them and release them, clench them and release them. I want you to do that while you're sitting at the red light. And I want you to do that at every red light in Hillsborough County. And I guarantee you, if you do that for a month, you will have the tightest gluteus maximus of anybody. Yeah? It didn't take you any extra time to do it because you're in your vehicle anyway. You're just sitting there, so you're clenching and releasing and clenching and releasing. And it works. I promise you it works. So that's an example of a call to action that you could use to help change somebody's behavior to match the way they think. All right? Let's say that you wanted to convince people to stop smoking. What you would want to do is take a poll, find out how many people don't smoke. If you find out the majority of your audience doesn't smoke, then you can't really, change anything, right? But you could try to find out how many of those people know somebody who smokes. And then you want to kind of have them become advocates for you. So one of your calls to action might be some kind of plan, some kind of technique for getting a student in your class, a member of your audience who is not a smoker, to change somebody else's behavior. So that needs to be one of your calls to action, right? Now, another reason that you need to know about your audience is because of behavior reinforcement. Just because we do something one time doesn't guarantee we're going to do it again, right? Absolutely no guarantee you'll come to church one Sunday, but no guarantee you'll come again. You'll clean up your room one time, no guarantee you'll clean it up again. You do homework one day like you're supposed to, no guarantee you're going to do it the next day, right? Nothing is guaranteed. So how do we encourage behavior reinforcement? Let's look at the case of somebody who doesn't smoke. Right? If you're already not a smoker, then you can't convince us to stop smoking because we're not smoking. So what you have to focus on is behavior reinforcement. How can I keep you from smoking, from ever starting to smoke? Is there some kind of call to action that you can offer those people that will give them the incentive and the motivation to never, ever start? That would be one thing. In my opinion, when it comes to behavior reinforcement, it really comes down to customer service. And let me give you an example. I used to be a Verizon customer. I hate Verizon. I don't know if you heard me clearly enough, so let me say it again. I hate Verizon. Verizon sucks. And there may be some of you out there who just love Verizon, more power to you, but I'm going to tell you that Verizon sucks. I would spend hours on the phone with them, dealing with all kinds of issues because I had everything Verizon at one time. My cell phone, my home phone, the Fios and my TV, my internet, everything was Verizon. And it was just aggravating and frustrating to have to deal with them constantly, and I would never get my issues resolved. And I voluntarily paid $200 to break my contract with them just so I would never have to deal with them again. And so I had to make a decision. Who was going to be my carrier? Who did I want to do my phone with when I canceled with Verizon? My value, what it is that I was trying to figure out was, it's not a matter of if something is going to break. It's really a matter of when it breaks. We all know at some point, sooner or later, whatever you buy is going to have a problem. And you are going to have to decide at that point how you're going to deal with it, which really means customer service. So to me, customer service is way more important than the quality of a product, because quality is just like almost a non-existent thing these days. I decided in making my decision who my particular carrier was going to be, I went with AT&T. Now, some of you may have had bad experiences with AT&T. Some of you may be applauding me for going to AT&T, but this is my experience with AT&T. Now, I would agree that AT&T probably doesn't have as great tech as Verizon does. It probably doesn't have as many cell towers out there, so it doesn't get as many bars all the time as Verizon does. But when push comes to shove, I can always count on AT&T to get my back. For instance, I have an iPad, and one day I went into the AT&T office to check on something. I think I was getting a new keyboard for my iPad. And so while the representative was helping me, he said to me, you know what, you could just put your iPad on your plan, on your phone plan. And I said, well, what difference would that make? What would that change? And he said, it doesn't really change anything. It's the same price. You're paying $30 a month. It's still going to be $30 a month. There's going to be no fees or anything like that. It's the same thing. It just makes it more convenient because it rolls it all together. I said, no extra fees or anything. He said, nope. I said, okay, well, if it makes it easier and more convenient, then I'll go ahead and do it. So he took my iPad and he put the SIM card in it, got me all set up. In the next bill, I got my bill, and there was a fee. It was like a little fee. So I was going over to AT&T to check on something, and I talked to one of the reps there who was a different rep than the one who helped me. And I said, can you tell me, what is this thing right here, this charge? And he said, oh, that's an activation fee. And I said, well, what's it for? And he said, it looks like your iPad got activated. And I said, wait a minute now. The rep told me that there would be no additional fees. He said, well, it's a standard thing when we set up a new phone. I said, the rep said there would be no additional fees. Why would I change a plan I was perfectly happy with if there was even a one-time fee associated with it? He said, you know, you're right, and he took it off. If it had been Verizon, I still would have been arguing with them about it today. And so that's an example of the kind of customer service that I get from AT&T that makes me very happy to stay with them, which is behavior reinforcement. And another example of behavior reinforcement is I had a student who worked at Publix, and everybody knows that Publix is all about customer service, right? This student worked in the deli section of Publix, and she would tell us that they would always have these specials. Every week there would be a sub or a sandwich that would be on special. And there was this one customer, an older woman, who would come in, and she would always want a particular sandwich, and then she would want it for the special price. So for instance, she came in one day and she said, I'd like the ham sandwich. The student said, okay, that's fine, but just so you know, the roast beef is on special. She's like, no, I want the ham sandwich. Okay. The student would make the ham sandwich, and then the customer would say, now I want it for the special price. And the student would say, I can't give you it for the special price. It's not on special. Roast beef's on special. So the customer would take the sub to the manager and say, I want this for the special price. And the manager would give it to her. Well, that student was irate. She was angry, and she went to the manager and she said, why are you doing this? Why are you giving that woman that special rate? You know she's just going to come back in next week and do it again. Why would you give that to her? All right, so think about this. Why would that manager do that? Because that customer was going to come back in next week. Behavior reinforcement. All right. And while that customer was waiting on her sandwich, or before she ordered her sandwich, or before she left, she went shopping in there. She probably told all her friends about how great Publix is and the customer service. They had a repeat customer because they treated her well. All right. It was probably worth the $2 they lost on the sandwich. So behavior reinforcement is one of the calls to action that you need to include in your persuasive speech. How can you get us to keep doing it if we're in that group? Now, another reason why a different group of people that you're going to be convincing in your audience is they don't have an opinion. And there are 3 reasons why this happens. Why doesn't somebody have an opinion? Well, the first one is they might be uninformed. They might not know enough about whatever the situation is to form an opinion. And this is the kind of thing that happens when people have elections. Most people don't vote in elections because they're afraid of making a bad choice, because they don't understand what the politicians stand for. They don't understand what the ballot item means, so they just don't vote at all. Right? So those are the people who have to educate themselves before they go in there so they can make a better decision. That's why you have infomercials. You watch these infomercials, which are informative commercials, education, persuasion, you put those together, and you keep watching it until you know enough about the product or the service that's being advertised to make a decision. Am I going to buy it, or am I going to change the channel? So one of the things you have to do in there is make sure that we have enough information, enough knowledge about whatever it is. So one of your calls to action may be to give us some places that we can research, that we can get some additional information if we're not familiar with whatever your particular topic is. Certainly a reasonable call to action. Another reason, another type of audience that you're going to be reaching is a neutral. Now, a neutral audience is the absolute best audience. That's the one you want to have because they don't have an opinion either way. They're sitting on the fence, and that would be the judge and the jury. If you are an attorney, you definitely want to have a judge and a jury that is impartial and unbiased, not being coerced by the mob or anything like that. And then what you do in that case is you give them everything you've got. So for those people out there, you want to give them all the ethos, all the logos, all the pathos, all the calls to action, everything that you can. You give them as much passion as you can, because when they fall off that fence, you want them to fall on your side of the yard. So deal with some of the people who might not care either. I could go this way or I could go that way. You want them to go your way. Now, the third type of person who might not have an opinion is somebody who's apathetic. And hopefully you know what being apathetic means. Apathy means not caring. So how do you convince somebody who doesn't care? I believe that an apathetic audience is probably one of the hardest audiences of all to deal with. You might try to personalize it if you're just dealing with one-on-one kind of thing. You might give them calls to action that are specific to them, related to their problems. And that's fine. You might have a shot at it. Usually when you have a whole group of people and a bunch of them are apathetic, you're going to have a hard time because they might be apathetic for different reasons. The bottom line is you honestly can't persuade an apathetic audience. An apathetic person is the hardest, almost impossible audience to try to persuade. And what you want to do in that case is you don't want to give up. You have to keep trying. You just have to keep trying. I had a student in one of my classes who was a recovering drug addict. And I remember she told me that while she was using, her parents and her friends and her family were all trying to convince her to get off drugs and to get, back into life and stuff. And she didn't care. She didn't care that it affected her family relationship. She didn't care that she lost her job. She didn't care that she was, almost out on the street. She didn't care. She just didn't care. She was like, oh, I don't care. All she wanted to do was get high. And I don't remember what she said happened, but something occurred and just snapped. And all of a sudden she cared. And at that point, they were still trying to convince her. And at that point, she was ready to listen to them. So the bottom line is when you're dealing with somebody who just doesn't care, you can't give up on them. You have to keep trying to convince them, even though it's the most heartbreaking, frustrating thing you can ever experience. Because at some point, they're going to move up. And when they move up, they could be, I agree with you, or they could be neutral about it, or they could move down and be hostile about it, which is probably more likely the case. All right, so just don't give up on those people, but realize that you're probably not going to convince them anytime soon. And then the third and final type of audience that you might be dealing with is a hostile audience. Now, a hostile audience, most people would think, oh, that's going to be the hardest audience to deal with. I don't think so, because you know where you stand. If you make somebody angry, you know where you stand. You cannot be surprised when they throw tomatoes at you because they dislike you. You know it's coming. Now, the question is, what do you do when you have a hostile audience? How do you handle a hostile audience? What approach do you take with somebody who's angry at you? Some people use the avoidance, I'm just gonna sneak through and not let anybody see me so they can calm down and, get their bearings and all that sort of thing. Some people confront it head on. Let's just get this out of the way and get it taken care of. So there are different approaches that you might take. So let's say that you are the CEO of a company, and the company has been around for years, serves the community, has a great reputation, has a great product, and everybody just loves this company. Well, all of a sudden, the company is losing money. They're just losing money hand over fist, and they need to do something about it. And so they have decided, based on all of their information, that they need to lay off half their staff. Well, geez, what are you going to do? And you, as the CEO of the company, you want to talk to these people. You want to explain what's going on. You want to make sure they understand what's happening and all that sort of thing. But you want to call a meeting before you lay them off. So what's going to happen is you've got 500 employees who are all angry at you because they don't know who's being laid off yet. So they're all looking at each other. Is it you? Is it you? Is it me? Who's going to? So they're all angry at you. And you get up in front of them and you want to talk to them. Out of the ethos, logos, and pathos characteristics, the one you do not want to use is pathos. All right? When somebody is angry, that's the pinnacle emotion. So you can't fight that emotion with another emotion. You can't get up in front of all those people and say, I'm so sorry. It breaks my heart to do this to you. You all are like family to me. Because what are they going to be doing? They're going to be throwing things at you. Yeah, that's not, if you will, you wouldn't do it. They'd be doing all that kind of thing to you. So they're not even going to be listening to you with those kinds of emotional statements. What you have to do is you have to focus on ethics and you have to focus on logic. You need to explain that the credibility of the company, the reputation of the company is at stake. You need to show them the financial reports. You need to explain to them what's been going on, where the money's being lost, and how this is going to help bring the company back to where it needs to be. That doesn't mean that you can't tell people you're sorry. You certainly should. But don't expect that to be the thing that sways them. They're not going to like it. They aren't going to like the fact that you're doing this to them, but they can understand and respect why you're doing it if they get the logical information, as opposed to you just crying and boo-hooing because what's it to you? You still have a job and they don't. And you can certainly offer them the opportunity to come back. You'll be the first ones we hire back if you're willing to work with us after we're able to recover. That's certainly something that you can offer. What you want to do then when it comes to knowing your audience is to figure out some calls to action. So I want you to, I'm going to stop the recording before I go. We'll take another break, and I want you to, whatever your topic is, I want you to write down a number of calls to action, that at least one for each of these different audience types, and you're going to turn that in for this assignment. And you tell me what your topic is. I want people to wear flip-flops, and then I want you to give me call to action 1 for the mind versus behavior, call to action 2 for behavior reinforcement, call to action 3 for the uninformed, call to action 4 for the neutral, call to action for the apathetic, and for somebody who's hostile, somebody who really hates flip-flops. What are you going to do to convince them? That would be me, because I think flip-flops are atrocious and people wear them way too much. All right, so take a few minutes, write down your topic, and then write down a call to action for each one of those, and we'll take a break.